Okay, whenever you're all ready.
Okay, great. Well, good morning or good afternoon, wherever you may be. Thank you for joining us today for the Sea Services Leadership Association Joint Women's Virtual Series. Today, we're going to be talking about Not All Heroes Wear Capes. And so I'm very excited to be moderating this session. First, a big shout out to our sponsors. Without them, we would not be able to do this. And so thank you very much to Johnson & Johnson, USAA, and Amazon. We really appreciate their sponsorship of this series so that we can bring this great content to everybody. We definitely want to hear from you. So as we move through this presentation, this discussion, please, take the time to input your questions or comments into the chat box, and we will try and address those either during the session or even afterwards. So please take the time to be a part of the conversation. We appreciate it. There'll also be a couple of polling questions during this, and so I'll give a good prompt on those, and we would love to get your feedback on those as well. A quick disclaimer, the views and the opinions expressed here are in this webinar are not endorsed by and do not represent the views of SSLA, the DoD, or Department of Homeland Security, or any other federal entities, okay? These are our personal views and experiences. However, I do also want to point out that this session is being recorded so that other folks can view this content at a later time. So with that, now we got all the administrative stuff out of the way, we'll jump right in and start introducing our great panel of beautiful women today. So again, my name is Lieutenant Colonel Jenny Storm. I'll be moderating. We've got with us today Senior Chief Christina Cook from the Navy. We have Chief Ramona Mason from the Coast Guard, Lieutenant Colonel Stephanie Wilson from the Air Force, and Sergeant First Class Tawana Washington from the Army. So we've got a great group across the services. And we'll go ahead and go to the next slides, and we'll provide everyone an opportunity to do a deeper introduction. So for me, again, Lieutenant Colonel Storm, Jenny, I am the president of SSLA. I have been the president for about a year now, and been with the organization for many, many years. I've been in the Marine Corps now for 21 years, and I have 3 children. That's only one of them in that photo there, my youngest, and oldest is 14. I've got a boy who is 11, and then that young man there, he just turned 8 years old. So loving the family and loving the military. So with that, we're going to get into the real content, and I'm going to ask Senior Chief Christina Cook to go ahead and introduce herself. So Christina, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, good morning, and thank you so much for having me on. A little bit about me: I am a CTI, which stands for Cryptologic Technician Interpretive, but in short terms, that means I'm a linguist. I've been in for 17 years now, and I'm a mom for almost 15 of those. So I have a 14-year-old daughter and a 13-year-old son, went back to back, started early. A little bit about my career. I fortunately, as a CTI, got the experience of being on shore duty for my first few years, and then had the opportunity to go air crew and do some direct support in Qatar and Turkey and Spain and Crete. So really enjoyed that, and then came back on shore duty, did instructor duty. But really by virtue of my rate, I think I've been very fortunate to be able to spend a good bit of that time with my children, aside from the times that I was, deployed and on TADs and for training and various things. Since the panel discussion, centers around motherhood, I just wanted to share that really what being a parent to me means is that I have this huge responsibility to raise good citizens of the world that add value to our lives collectively on planet Earth. So, the lives of the people that they interact with and influence and affect. So parenting is an enormous responsibility in that way. And just thinking about it now, I think not only do we serve our country in that capacity, but, we serve our nation by making sure that, we raise awesome individuals. So I hope it is looked at in that way and given the importance that it deserves.
Absolutely. Wonderful introduction. Thank you. So we'll go ahead and move on to Chief Ramona Mason. So Ramona, tell us about yourself.
Good afternoon or morning. I'm
an operations specialist by trade. I currently work in personnel management division for the enlisted workforce for the Coast Guard. I have been in for just 16 years now. I've been a mom for only about 8 of those. I have 2 little ones. My daughter Delilah, she's 8, and we're doing virtual 3rd grade together right now. And then my son Charlie, he's about to be 3, so he's keeping us extremely busy with everything in life. Our dynamics are a little bit different in our household just because my husband's in the Coast Guard as well. So we are dual military, and he has a pretty high demanding job as well. He's one of the NCOs over at our Coast Guard Honor Guard. So he's always traveling and doing training and working extremely long hours. We have always split up our parenting, so that has been making it somewhat difficult and easy at the same time. But I love being in the Coast Guard. It has given us so many opportunities, and my kids are amazing. So it's been a good split.
Great. Thank you very much. Lieutenant Colonel Stephanie Wilson. Stephanie.
Well, good day, everyone, and thank you so much for asking me to be a part of this panel. As was stated, my name is Lieutenant Colonel Stephanie Wilson. I am in the Air Force. I've been in for, if I start doing the numbers, it hurts my head, but 19 and a half years at this point. I've had the pleasure of commanding squadrons twice. That picture up there is of my latest family that I had to depart with last summer. I am a mom of 4 amazing children with my husband. We met in college, and that handsome man has never served in the military and finds my outfits very entertaining that I wear to serve. My children span the ages of 15 to 6. And I know what it is to feel tired, which is why I included that last picture showing my 2 girls. And I was actually pregnant with my son while in command in that photograph. And so I know the juggle, the rhythm, not necessarily the balance, the rhythm that we all have to figure out to get into in order to make it all work. I'm excited about the panel and your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Great picture. And lastly, Sergeant First Class Twaina Washington. Twaina.
Greetings, everyone. I am super excited about being a part of this panel. So a little about me. I am active duty Army. I have been in for 16 years. I have 2 children, my son who is 15 and my daughter who is 14. So for all of you viewers and also panelists, we all share, if you have a daughter, we share that headache of, having a teenage girl. So yeah, that's my biggest thing right now. But I am a basketball mom. Both of my children play basketball, so they keep me very much entertained. I'm also a fitness instructor. I teach extreme hip hop. I'm also a fashionista, so I love to shop, which is a good thing and a bad thing, I guess you could say. But I would say mostly that being active duty military and being a parent, I've grown. Me individually, I've grown. My children and I have grown together, so it has been trials and tribulations, but it's all been worth it, and I wouldn't change it again. I wouldn't change it for anything in this world. So I look forward to answering questions, and that's all.
Great. Well, thank you very much. So again, just as a quick reminder before we get into it, feel free to use the Q&A function to type in any questions or comments that you've got. And we also have folks that might be joining us on Facebook Live. And so just message us in the comments and we'll certainly make a point to get back with you. So we're going to start out with a polling question just to get an idea of who we have out there watching us. And so here in a moment, it should pop up for you. How many children do you have? And we may have some folks that have no kids yet. They're just trying to figure out how or when to embark on that journey while trying to balance their military career. And we may have some that are quite veteran at this. So take a minute here and you'll also see how easy it is to do these polling questions. Just select your answer and we'll give it just a couple of minutes and we will see who we've got out there joining us today. I think it's always interesting to see how many kids people have. Being a parent of an only child, I think can be just as challenging as a parent of many children. There was a study that came out once that said 3 was actually the hardest number to have. I thought that was interesting. Once you go beyond 3, apparently it gets easier. So maybe those who have more than 3 can tell us. I think only children can sometimes be demanding. They all have their challenges, that's for sure. So let's see if we've got the results for that. Should pop up for us. All right, there we go. So look at that. Half of our group right now who chose to answer the question, maybe is just listening in to try and see if they even want to, or when maybe to start balancing family and military career. And then we've got a couple of folks here who answered that are a bit more veteran at this. So very interesting to see. And with that, we're just going to go ahead and jump into asking some of our questions into the discussion we've got today. So I think the first question I'd like to ask the panel, what was the most surprising or unexpected part about becoming a mom while serving in the military?
Well, I'll start. One thing that I kind of forgot to mention, just obviously there have been different phases of my life. So I married my high school sweetheart, and we were both in the military. So I was dual military for a period of time, which was very difficult. And then I was a single mom for a while. And now I'm fortunate to have a partner that has blessed our lives immeasurably. But I feel like I identify with everyone on the panel. And having started out very young, I think I 100% kind of took for granted what it would mean for my career, because no one had ever really prepared me for that internal struggle or conflict that I would have of seeing my fellow single childless sailors that had more time on their hands to volunteer and to be involved. So in a lot of ways, it made me feel like, well, as long as I'm a sailor, I'm never going to be the mom that I want to be. And as long as I'm a mom, I'll never be able to give 100% to being a sailor. But I think the more that I have, grown into my role as a mom and as a sailor, I kind of had to realize that in any good kind of healthy relationship, you need to be able to put what that 100% is into perspective that you have to give and figure out what that means to you and not compare yourself to others. All you can do is just kind of give your best. Some days that might be that 100%, but more often than not, it probably won't be. But as long as you kind of have that love and respect, both from your kids and from your organization, you can kind of come to terms with the fact that like what you have to give is enough.
That's a great point.
One thing.
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you. I think one thing that surprised me is actually how much help you can get if you don't wait till you're at your breaking point, to try and make sure that you build the village. And I think we have a question about this later, but you build it early before the crisis, right? Kind of like we try to do in our military work. We try to build relationships before that big event occurs. Same thing kind of happens with motherhood. Don't compare yourself to that Pinterest model. Don't even compare yourself maybe to how you might have grown up. What works for your family and your life right now, and being confident in that has definitely surprised me. But I will say gaining my voice through my military career has helped me gain my voice quite clearly as a mom.
Very good.
So I think the biggest thing right there was the whatever works for you and your family. So when I had my first kid, when we had Delilah, I was a watchstander. So anytime she was sick, or she was in daycare and had to get picked up because she was sick, or she had a fever, or somebody needed to stay home, it was never me. I couldn't leave work. It always had to be my husband, who was in a day working Monday through Friday position. So he'd be like, "Hey, I have to go home. I have to go get the child from daycare. My wife's up in the operations center. She can't leave. She's the only watchstander." So that was the biggest adjustment, the biggest surprise for me, that when my kid was sick, I couldn't be the one cuddling her and taking her to the appointments. We had to completely adjust, and it's not what everybody tells you how it should be. It should be the mom that's taking care of the kids. But for our family, that didn't work in our dynamics. So it was always my husband taking them.
Excellent. Twaina, anything to add?
I have some. For me, I would say, prior to joining the military, I consider myself a great multitasker. So I thought becoming a parent and being able to have, a full-time job, it would be perfect. I would be able to balance and do all that. But one of the hardest things that I found was trying to balance a career and raise my children. I struggled a lot with, trying to be an excellent soldier, because I had my son when I initially came. I had only been in the Army for a year. So I was still learning how to be a soldier, and I'm also learning how to be a mother at the same time. Being that, being a soldier put the food on the table, I had to be the best at that. I wanted to be the perfect soldier. I wanted to get the job done. I was the go-to person. And I began to not really fail, but lack. I put the Army before my children. I did start off married, but then we got divorced. So I became a single parent. And to me, I didn't want to fail. There were people who needed me, soldiers who needed me, leadership who needed me. And I hold everything to the highest regard. So it was like, I have to do this. They'll miss me now, but they'll love me in the future. That's how I looked at it. Another thing was parenting. Only thing I knew, my mother was also a single parent and military as well. So I only knew her style of parenting. So initially that's how I started, but it didn't work for my kids. So I'm the 80s baby, right? So 80s children, we received lots of spankings, no explaining, right? So I had to learn that won't work for my children. How do I do that? And being in the Army, I was a drill sergeant. As I started to learn how to mold and teach initial soldiers, I began to take those things and use them in the household. Because initially it was drill sergeant mode all the way. I was treating my children like drills, like little privates, right? So it didn't work. So I had to look at myself, reevaluate, and become more patient. And I learned that the same way that soldiers have different, they're receptive in different ways, my children are receptive in different ways. So I had to treat them individually. So those are some things that I think I learned most. Like I said in my introduction, it was a growing experience for myself and a growing experience with my children.
I think that's an excellent point. And as you were talking about that, I thought I did a little bit of backwards. I think having been a mother made me a better commander when I had Marines under me. I felt like I brought a lot of that motherly mentoring aspect to working with the Marines. And in a way, they felt like my kids, right? When they did something wrong, it kind of disappointed us like it had been one of our kids. I want to go ahead and jump to a question that somebody went ahead and posted up here because it's related to this topic. And so for those that are member to member married, both currently serving, my husband's retired. We didn't have kids when he was still actively serving. So for those that have both, people actively serving, how do you handle the stigma of being the mom and being the one always expected to respond to your children's needs over your husband? It sounds like maybe not all of you, that's how it's been, but have you been in that situation where you've kind of had that stigma of mom, and how do you balance being the mom in that dual service couple?
Okay, so that was extremely tough for us to figure out the balance at first. Like I said, it was always my husband for the first 4 years when we had our daughter Delilah. It was always him. He was the mom, and taking the kids to the appointments. And once we transferred to a different location and I had a different job, I made it immediately known with my command. And it was an open communication with my command and with his command, was we're splitting this. So when our kid is sick multiple days, I will stay home one day, my husband will stay home the next day, and then it will be my turn again. So it was really hard finding the balance, but it was a lot of open communications between my husband and I, and then our command. And we're not in the same situations as the military members that have a stay-at-home wife that can tend. Like we can't just stay at home, but we need to figure out what the balance was for us.
Excellent. Yeah.
So if I may, having been, previously married dual mill and now unofficially mill to mill, what I have found, and especially in my experience, so right now I work in language policy, but before this, I had the opportunity to work in inclusion and diversity and specifically focus on pregnancy and parenthood issues. And so something that really has occurred to me as far as the stigma, right, is it like, this is not something that's relegated just to the military, right? This is a societal thing, right, that affects all of us. And if you do the research and you look at different countries and kind of how they handle gender roles and the involvement of fathers and the domestic labor, portion of our home lives, it really becomes incumbent upon us, not just kind of, as women, to sort of expect that not only do we have equality in the workplace, but we have equality at home too. And that's the only way in which we're going to be able to manage this, our integration into the services. And I think that it's incumbent upon the military services and policy, right, to be able to kind of give that role to our fathers and say fatherhood is important too, parenthood is important for them too, and they need to be just as involved, to where there's no stigma of, well, the expectation is that you go take the kid to appointments. No, the dad should be going too, right? And so I think that's where it really comes in, is from from the top down, but also leading at the deck plates, and that cultural revolution where we need to involve the dads more, and make sure that their role in parenting is just as important as the mother's role, in my personal opinion.
Can I jump in on that? Although I'm not mill to mill, I have a professional husband who's got a job. And so do not think that just because you're mill to mill, that is a unique issue. I distinctly remember calling a place trying to find somewhere, because my second child was born when maternity leave was still 6 weeks. Where am I going to place a 6-week-old infant so I can go back to work? And the person on the other line said, well, most mothers stay home for 8 to 10 weeks. And being who I was, I told them what they could do with their most mothers. But I came home and I was so upset, and I looked at my husband, and he sat back and he said, I'm working from home right now. I'm teleworking. This is the only way his job could remain while we moved. Maybe it's best if I keep him. And I looked at him like, that is not how the family thing was, like, in my head. Like, I'm the mommy, this is how this works. And he said, how many dads get to spend this much time with an infant? Give me that boy, but if he starts moving too much, then we got to look for a daycare. So I would also add, maybe adjust your expectations of what you pick for a spouse from the very beginning. Have those conversations early about role expectations, so that you don't find yourself 5-6 years later with the kids crying, trying to have that conversation. Selection of your spouse is also very important in managing motherhood, either by yourself or joint parent wise. So I just wanted to add that.
Excellent. Yeah. I would say too, I think COVID might be helping this. I'm always trying to look at the silver lining, because, everyone chalks up this year as just being a really tough year. But I can tell you that in our workplace, the women can't lose their careers during this. And so it's become a balance of, who's doing the teleworking or who's staying home that week and who's going in the office. And I have seen a lot of the guys in my office take a bigger role of, hey, this is the week that my wife's got to be at the office and I've got a kid who's got a doctor's appointment. I need to go take care of this. And so I see the silver lining that maybe it's helping to nudge our society and all of us to get maybe a bit more used to the dads playing a bigger role. Absolutely.
I have a quick input, if you don't mind. My ex-husband, we were dual military as well. So I'll speak on it from a perspective of a failing case, because that was a problem with us. We didn't know how to both manage a career and be parents. Being that I am definitely an alpha dominant female, I automatically took it on that I had to do everything. I had to make everything happen. My ex-husband was in leadership, so I didn't want him to fail, so I took on everything on myself. So I definitely say, if you find that you are in that situation where you're dual military or both professionals, either way it goes, and one is giving more than the other or sacrificing, definitely communicate. You've got to communicate. We were both young when we were married, so we were very prideful. We didn't talk about these things. We didn't have that conversation. And then when it got to the point to where we couldn't fix it, we just decided, hey, this isn't working for us. So we separated. So I say definitely have that communication, work out, hey, when I can't do this, I need you to do that. Don't always take it on by yourself. Involve the other parent. Make sure they're being, they're giving their all as well, so that you don't tire out and so that you don't feel like you're the only one doing everything.
Excellent point. So again, I'm deviating from the script because I think we've got some great questions that have been coming in. So from Facebook, someone had asked, we've got a fair number of people that maybe don't have a spouse yet or don't have kids yet and are trying to plan this. And so do you have any recommendations for how you plan this out? I know people will talk about, well, maybe I need to wait until I've done X, Y, Z in my career. How do you balance that and pick the right timing and really prepare for the journey into being a mother?
So I've got a lot of kids. I started at 25 when I was a captain, and I had my last one in command, which I would not suggest, but things happen. My husband's cute. So the thing I always go back to is I have never heard someone say, I wish I didn't have this kid. I've yet to hear that. And I've way too many friends at my age range who waited to the point where medical had to be so involved in their fertility that they could not make those decisions without a lot of medical assistance. It's biology, right? And so if you are young trying to make up your mind, what I would ask you to do is actually plot your life for the next 15 years. Plot out what you think you would like to do with your career. 3 plot lines. In the Air Force, we call it a ribbon chart. 3 plot lines, 3 different career kind of paths and things. And then put in where you think having children would work. And then press. I will tell you, deployments will come when they come. Jobs will come when they come. Your recovery from that, it's truly what you put in prior to being out for maternity leave and growing with that child, and then what you come back and do, how you're able to bounce back, right? And come back into the fight. It is not as easy. It is much harder to think about. But I'd ask you to really think about that early so that you don't get to a point of shoulda, woulda, coulda. And because of science, there are options if you choose not to do that with a spouse and try to do it on your own as well. So do not leave yourself wondering, but plot it out and really think about school timing for those who have to go to school in residence. If you're gunning for a certain deployment or opportunity, maybe overseas, just kind of look at that so that you have ownership over that. So that's my suggestion.
Great, thank you.
So that's very similar as what I tell. So one of the things I do for my job is I counsel enlisted females on afloat positions. So Coast Guard seagoing service, right? Certain rates have to have a certain amount of sea time under their belt before they can advance. So one of the things I do is I talk with all the females year round and discussing and coming up with plans. So I always have them sit down. I'm like, okay, make a plan A, make a plan B, make a plan C. And figure out what is best for you, for your life, and for your career. Like, what do you really want? And just like she said, what is your goal? Is your goal to become, the next Master Chief of the Coast Guard? Is your goal to go warrant officer? Figure out what your plan is, figure out your goals, and how to get there. And I always tell them, I was like, it's a lot easier to get your float time out of the way when you're younger than when you're older with children. So, not saying you don't have to get underway when you're older. You might still have to get underway when you have kids, but it's a lot easier to do it when you're 20, 22 and you're going to Costa Rica than when you're 35 with an 8-year-old at home that's missing you and crying for mom.
Great. I would say, I would kind of pile on and say, don't wait too long for sure. I was one of those that waited a while to even start to try and have children. And then the body didn't cooperate. And it wasn't that I was old. I just, had my own issues and pregnancy didn't happen right away. So even when you do make your plans, understand that the military might have a different idea for you than what you came up with. And your body might have a different idea for you than what you've come up with. So, allow yourself some grace in that and some flexibility, and decide that, hey, if success is predicated on having a child in this 9-month window, and it has to be this 9-month window, you're probably not going to be successful. You need to allow some more time And yeah, I definitely, I hate to see people wait too long. And then I hear that far more often, regret of having waited too long, vice those who say, oh, I shouldn't have had that kid so young. Okay, well, great conversation. So one of the questions I wanted to ask, there's a ton of self-help books out there, a ton of them. And are there any in particular that you have found that's been particularly helpful, that you've referenced in your journey as a mom, as a military mom, that you would recommend to anyone else out there?
So I talk a lot, so I'll jump in, I guess, until someone comes off mute. I know this sounds really basic, but I got this book called Who Moved My Cheese? I believe it's Dr. Spencer Johnson. And it's a little thin book about mice and change, right? And so what I found to be very beneficial as a mother is to accept change. My plan might not be what actually occurs for a multitude of reasons. Shoes not being tied, meltdown because the rock they found wasn't in the pocket they thought, all of those things, but kind of putting yourself in the mindset that change happens. You will be fine. They will be fine as well, has actually really kind of calmed my spirit. And last, I think the last one for self-help a bit is I'm very fortunate to have a mom who was in the military. And one of the things she told me, and she's still here with me, is she said, call me and scream in the phone if you need to. So having a good person to just call and yell on the phone, and then she's like, do you feel better? Okay, pop those pity party balloons and now get back to work. And so I know it's not a book, but having that self-help person can also be very beneficial as well.
Great.
Well, so a book that I've read recently, which has sort of kind of become my guide for like womanhood in general, is Glennon Doyle's Untamed. I think I've bought like 6 copies so far for my girlfriends. It's completely transformed like all of us, to the point that some of them are actually making a lot of major life changes. So she just, gosh, has some incredibly powerful, poignant statements just about motherhood and specifically about raising kids today, right? Because every generation is different. And I don't think that we can or really should parent them the same way our parents did, kind of like how Toyna, said. And so I think, Untamed is a book that I have reread, I have highlighted. I can only read so much in one sitting. Usually I just devour books, but it's a lot of truth to absorb. So you really kind of have to take your time with it. And I couldn't recommend it more highly. Don't want to spoil anything, but it's really fantastic.
I think I can comment on this one a little bit. So I haven't really read any, well, not going to say I haven't really, I have not read any self-help mom books. But I think definitely talking with other mothers, specifically maybe with children of your age, also older women who have children, that has definitely been helpful for me. And like Stephanie, like you said, you had your mom said to call and scream into the phone. So as a kid, for me, my mom would like have somebody come to the house and watch us, and then she'd disappear for the weekend. And as I got older, she said sometimes I just had to go and get a hotel room, be by myself, decompress, and then I can come back to being the parent that I need to do. One thing about parenthood is it definitely gets overwhelming. And if you're a single parent, sometimes you're going to be like, I just need a break. Not everybody has that break. Sometimes you may need to just go in your room, close the door. I've done that several times as well. So that's been a thing that's been helpful, but definitely speaking with other people, because lots of times you think, this has to only be my child, like only my child, or maybe I'm failing here. What am I doing wrong? And then when you start to converse with other individuals, you're like, oh, well, I'm not the only one going through this. How did you get through that? What did you do? And of course, you'll take what they say, work it into your family, because again, what worked for them may not work for you. And you kind of, you feed off everyone else and you try what works here and what works there. So it's definitely been conversations that I've had with other parents. No books, just conversations with people.
Great. I would add one other, an actual book, and this one has nothing to do with being a military mom, but it actually had a tip that I've always carried with me. And that was Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I think the piece that I took away from that was identifying our roles, right? Here are the things that's important. I would take it down. Okay. I am a daughter and sister. That's an important role as part of my family. I am a wife. I am an employee or a Marine, whatever. I'm a service member. I am a mother. I am a child of God. I would list all my priorities and then make sure that every week I'm doing something that met each of those priorities. And that helped me make sure I didn't leave something out, because it is a difficult balancing act. So definitely not a book about military or motherhood, but a book that I've found value in. All right, great. Well, we're going to throw up another poll question real quick. And as we talked about, as people are bringing up, support and the people they talk to and the mothers and the friends, we're going to ask right now, who has been your greatest supporter? And so, all of us have somebody we need to lean on. It sounds like a lot of us, it's our mothers. If we're fortunate enough to have that relationship, if our mothers are still with us, I know, it's great for me to call and say, oh my God, my teenage daughter is complaining about this again. Do I ignore this or do I do something about it? It's great to have her. For some people, it's a faith community. For some, it's work. Maybe the people at your work are the support that you need. So who has been your greatest supporter? And take a moment and add that, answer that polling question. Our panelists are not able to chime in and answer these, so definitely looking for our participants. All right. We have some results we can pop up there. Okay, so spouses and significant others, definitely, and parents. Probably not surprising. I think that is a lot of times the ones that are closest to us, and definitely some friends. And it's good to see that some folks are finding some support from their commands as well, definitely. So along that note, and I know many of you have touched on this already, but is there anything in particular that any of you would like to add about how you built your village of helping hands, of the people who are around you and supporting you? Anything that maybe you haven't shared yet that you would like to chime in with now?
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of wanted to touch back on the question when we were talking about items that you need to consider before starting a family, right? And I think that it is conceiving of what does your village look like, right? Some of us are lucky enough to have that, spouse or partner that's going to be there and be our number one fan, biggest supporter, which goes back to Lieutenant Colonel's point about choose that person wisely, because that is going to have a huge effect on your career and your ability to balance those things. Some of us are fortunate enough to have parents that are willing to answer the call of duty. My mom came and took care of my kids when I was deployed, but I have to consider the fact that not everyone has that. So that's why it's so important to, in your planning, is to think about who is your village going to be. Are you fortunate enough to have, that good partner or those parents that are going to support you? And if you don't, I think for those times when my mom wasn't able to be there, I was just really lucky to find other women that I, clicked with, because we had that shared experience. My best friend in A school is still my best friend today, about to celebrate our 17-year anniversary. So she was there for me through a lot. She was my kid's godmother. She's kind of like a life partner. We joke about being golden girls eventually. It's my life goal. But I'm very lucky to have her. And again, I was in a rating that had more women than average, and not to get off topic, but that competition that we sometimes tend to create, or that others even force on us in male dominated settings, I think that sometimes contributes to somewhat of a barrier to creating the village, because we have to be able to support each other and lift each other up. And if we can't do that, if we feel threatened by each other, we're not going to succeed together. So there's that incredible power, in the sisterhood that helps us to create the village. I think that's how it starts. So, again, really consider that in terms of your family planning, and again, support each other.
You've got to share to get care to get this village. You can't wait for someone to ask you out as a mom. You can't be waiting for that mom friend to show up and be like, be my friend. We have children. Let's go. Sometimes you got to show up in the yoga pants with the weird hairdo, with the chip on your shoulder from your kids wiping their lunch and be like, I am having a hot mess day. Are you having a hot mess day? And be a little vulnerable in order to make those friends. I jokingly said that between the age of 2 and 5, I signed my kids up for activities. It wasn't for them. It was for me to meet another parent with a kid the same age so I could be like, is that normal? Because I don't know if that's normal because they look weird and I'm a smart girl, but that looks not so smart, you know, and I just wanted to make sure that they were still in that bubble. And what I love is with technology, those dance moms, those dance class moms, and that soccer mom group that I had when our kids were 3 and 5 and 7, even with PCSs, I can reach out to them and ask a question or commiserate. Me and another mom were just saying, you know, they have all these play groups for new mamas, which you do need that. But I'm going to tell you, the 15 to 17-year-old mamas, we need a play group too. Like, I need to be like, isn't this normal? And so, but I have to share, I have to be a little bit vulnerable and be like, my kid's having issues with this. How do I help them? I'm having issues with this. My daughter is a personality opposite of mine in some ways, as far as the way she takes school and education. And I had to put down my expectations for her and look at what she needed and what she brings to it, because we're different. And that takes a lot of you putting away some of your personal pride to do that. But other moms and other parents can help you with that. And my husband and I check each other as well to make sure we're doing right by each other. But that really, you have to share to get care, to get that supportive village into place.
Stephanie, I loved your point about being vulnerable. And I love that because it kind of strikes a chord with me, because I think that's probably where I've not been so good, right? You know, to admit that I'm not on top of my game maybe, and I might need some help with this. And, you know, sometimes when if I'm talking to somebody about something, I feel like I have failed as a parent. And so, yes, to say, okay, I'm going to make myself vulnerable, expose that I'm not mother extraordinary and my kids aren't perfect. So I think that's a wonderful point. Some of us need to take that advice more.
Yeah, I think you need to build your village as soon as you arrive somewhere. I mean, when we moved to Virginia, we had our home inspection and I grabbed my daughter and we walked around the neighborhood. I'm like, we're going to find some kids and we're going to find some kids you can be friends with and I can meet their mom. And then we have a case of emergency, you know, in case something happens, because who you're going to call. So we walked around and, you know, we found there were these great little girls playing outside and they kicked it off right away. And the next day when our moving truck showed up, the mom walks back. She's like, I see the truck. Would you like us to take your daughter off your hand for a couple hours so you guys can unpack? And that just started off great. I was like, oh, this is going to be okay. We're not going to have to panic. You know, there's plenty of moms in this area and everybody's willing to help each other out. And between that, and then I make friends with my husband's coworkers' wives. You know, everybody's in the same situation where who needs somebody in case of an emergency. So if we're there for each other and we're each other kids, you know, parents, kids in case of emergency, then I think it's all going to be okay in the end.
Excellent.
So I'll give you input from an introvert perspective. So I am an introvert, but I become an extrovert once I become comfortable with people. So it's very hard for me to really talk with others and get out and meet new people. So most of my associates, I shall call them, are probably people who I've met through my children. Outside of that, I know no one else. But I have developed a couple of individuals. When I was stationed in Fort Drum, I met an individual who's my best friend now, where we both were in a situation where she came to watch her niece for her sister while her sister deployed. And I was pregnant with my daughter. My son was 6 months old and my ex-husband had just deployed for a 15-month rotation. So we built a relationship to help each other. And that relationship has since carried on since 2006. Like when I was a drill sergeant, she just so happened to be in Columbia, South Carolina. And guess who was my support system? She was. And then also when I was a drill sergeant, you meet other people, same as everyone has stated, you speak with your peers, you get out there and you talk to them, and you have to rely on each other for that. You don't have to be friends with them. I guess in my case, you don't have to, but we all see eye to eye and we realize, hey, I'm a single mom or I'm a single parent. I can help you. You know, we don't have to go out and get drinks or hang out, but whenever you need anything, I'm here. And potentially a relationship can build from there. So for me, as an introvert, like I said, it's very hard for me to get out and meet new people and then trust people with my children as well. But I definitely, growing up and maturing more, I realized that it is a good thing to get out there and meet people and talk with them and, you know, have those relationships so that you don't always have to rely on long distance support, which is what I call my mom long distance support, because if I ever need anything long term, she's there. She can't get to me immediately, but you will need that immediate support. So that's my input.
That's great. There's one question that I wanted to make sure I had time for, and I don't think we're going to be able to get to everything, but I think this is an important one, and one that maybe we're generally not as good at doing, and that's talking about giving ourselves grace. And why is that important to give ourselves some grace? And how do you practice patience? Because we all didn't just, you know, show up being great mothers. And I know I speaking for myself, I can certainly beat up on myself for darn it, I should have done this better and that better and this better and that better. And that's really not productive. So any recommendations from any of you wonderful ladies? Uh-oh, I played Stomp the Chomp.
I'll start. I think for me, the practicing patience, like I said, as a drill sergeant, that's where I learned my patience. Definitely learned my patience there. Understanding that your expectations of your kids is not what you want it to be. Like, I think someone said something about tying shoelaces. Like, I remember trying to teach my son how to tie his shoelaces, and the method that I was teaching him, lost. He could not get it for anything. And then someone was like, oh, have him try this method. Where have you been all my life? So I definitely had to learn that just because I know how to do something and it's easy for me, it is not easy for them because they've never done it before. And you have to remember, the same way it took you steps to learn, it will take them steps to learn as well. So you've got to develop that mindset that I am in teaching mode. I cannot expect for my children to know everything. You've got to allow them to make mistakes. You've got to allow them to learn on their own. So that's how I've developed my patience. I would definitely say some of my giving myself grace is to realize that I'm a perfectionist, but things won't always go right. That's my biggest thing. There's been many times where I've questioned myself as a parent. Did I do this right? Did I do this wrong? They don't know right from wrong. They don't know what it's like to be a parent. So they're looking at you. And if you doubt yourself, if you feel that you are failing in areas, it's like that kind of goes on to them and it takes them down. That's what I've kind of learned with my kids. So I always try to keep a positive attitude. I talk to them. Hey, what do how I've asked my kids questions all the time. Do you think I'm a good mom? And they'll be like, yeah, I absolutely do. And then in my head, I'm like, if you only knew some of the things that I've messed up on or I didn't do right, where I failed you or I could have did these things better. So definitely do not be hard on yourself. Understand that you are learning, they're learning, and it's a process. And every day it's new. What you did last year might not work this year. You know what I'm saying? You have to step back, readjust. So that's my biggest thing. Just accepting the fact that things won't always go as planned. I'm not perfect, but I'm not failing them. I am doing what I need to be done. I am a great mother. Have those self-talks with yourself, do those affirmations, and just stay in a positive mindset as a parent.
One of my good friends gave me a note card that said, any of your failures as a parent are just giving your kids good stories for their future therapist. And it made me laugh so hard that I just try to remember that they'll be okay. I'll be okay. And someone will be entertained by what goes on at some point in their life. And I teach them grace. I teach them to say, I'm sorry when you're wrong. And I try to model that. So if mama's wrong, and I don't care how big or small they are, and with the 4, sometimes you get the, oh no, who did it? This one did it. And magically this occurred in the house, you know, the I don't know monster or what have you. And I have to take a step back and say, here's why I'm asking this. You know, I need to know this for safety. I need to know this for your health. I need to know this because we've got allergies in the household. And so I'm going to give you another opportunity to think about what mama just said. And then I'm going to come back and you can fix your answer. But if I was wrong in punishment, then I need to say I'm sorry too. The same way I would do for any of my airmen. If I was wrong with a decision I made professionally, I would need to woman up and say I'm sorry. I would need to atone for that in whatever way I possibly could. Why would I offer that to the people I professionally work with and not give that example to those little people who Christina said very well that I am trying to raise to put out into culture, and hopefully once they have a job, raise future generations of us even better. And so I try to remind myself that their life is not a sacrifice. They don't know any other life than the one I am presenting to them. So nothing with my career is, oh, they're sacrificing. No, they're not. They like Disney. They like food. They like their shoes. They like Nintendo. There is no sacrifice occurring in that household. But what it is how can I take those military lessons I've learned and make my household better and make me better and hopefully make them better so that I can give to the world better people, citizens, as Christina has mentioned. And in that, give myself grace. So there's days where I tell them, we're all just going to have a power recharge hour. We're going to go to our rooms, take our little blanket. I don't want to hear nobody for a little while. My little one, that doesn't always work. But we try to give each other that space when there's 6 people in the household to just be. But also, sometimes you don't want that. And that's okay too. To be together is what you want. So you can't expect them to give each other grace if you're not giving it to yourself. So I think that's the most important thing.
Stephanie, I want to come live in your house. Sounds fun.
Yeah, everyone has, there's so much truth in what I'm hearing, and just our shared experiences and the different ways in which we, approach it, but yet so similar. It is about, having perspective and realizing that time and energy are finite resources, right? We can't realistically expect ourselves to live up to some of the crazy standards that I think society sets for us, which makes it easy to be hard on ourselves, especially when we compare ourselves to all these, curated versions of, the lives of people on social media, the highlight reels that everyone else seems to be living. So that's why, in terms of books, because I do like to read, I love Brene Brown. She writes about courage and about vulnerability. Her last book was called Dare to Lead, which is actually on our CNO's reading list. But she talks about embracing, your own mess, embracing your imperfections. Her books have really spoken to my heart. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Like Tawana was talking about, that desire to be a perfectionist. And just realizing I can't equate my self-worth with how productive or how useful I am. We're all human, we're all imperfect, we all struggle, and that's okay. That's the real life. And so we have to give ourselves grace. We have to be patient and kind towards others too. Similar to how Stephanie had said, we extend grace to others, we have to extend it to ourselves. But conversely, I think sometimes when we are hard on ourselves, we're hard on others, but we have to extend that patience, that kindness to others, because we have no idea what they're going through or what they're dealing with. And I know that every now and then, people might say, oh, you're too much of an optimist or you're naive, but I would prefer, right, to live in a world where I give the benefit of the doubt and I assume good intent for others. And I think that is, the mantra that really helps me to exercise patience.
That's great. Ramona, would you like to round us out?
Yeah, I'll finish this out. And oh man, do kids teach us patience, huh? I mean, they just know what buttons to push at the exact time, and especially at times like right now. So I think that was the biggest thing, right? Is like, I think it's self-care and figuring out what works for you and what makes you recharge, because I feel like I have to do it all at times, right? So I'm working from home, I'm doing online third grade, I'm trying to control a 2-year-old, I'm giving career counseling while my 2-year-old is screaming, wanting more gummy bears at 8 in the morning. And my life's falling apart, right? And the house is a mess. And I'm like, something has to give here. Like, what are we doing? This cannot go on. So, one of the things I do for my self-care is I get up at 5 in the morning and I go running. Everybody's still asleep. I don't feel like I'm missing out on family time. I'm not missing out on my time with my husband. So I run marathons just to keep my mind clear and to have decompressing times with myself. And then when I come back, I'm a much better person. I'm a better mom. I'm a better wife. That's what I do. And I think everybody needs to find exactly what is that self-care that they need to recharge them and to help them manage work and children, and especially at times right now when everybody's just sitting in their home and probably getting tired of each other.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I have to say, I know there were questions that we did not get to. And for those, I'm sorry we didn't get to that during this discussion. There's so much to talk about. There's so much to say. Definitely reach out to folks and talk. I haven't found a mother yet that doesn't want to talk about their children and who is, not more than willing to share the experiences from the journey. And so definitely reach out to people. So ladies, I thank you all for your time very much. Very enjoyable listening to all of you and hearing your different experiences. So for those who are listening, just want to remind you that we'll have another webinar coming up Monday, the 23rd. So get a grip on investing. We'll have Mr. Montanero from USAA talking about some investment strategies, and our excellent Vice President, Lieutenant Corinne Powers, will be moderating that session. So please join us if you are available. And again, these are recorded. So if you won't be available at that time, please come back later and look for that. We will post those. Also, a reminder that becoming an SSLA member does have some benefits. So, we are a growing organization, especially this year. Again, COVID presented some great challenges for us, and we adjusted. And some of the things that we've done with the hard work of some of our board members is actually doing some great things. And so the organization has grown significantly in the last many months. So please think about joining, trying to set up some regional task forces, opportunities for that. If you're a member, we held a book club and look forward to our next book club that we will have, and other benefits. So definitely take the time to do that. So for the Joint Women's Leadership Virtual Series, we've got a few more weeks left of this. This was in place of our in-person jewels, as we call it for short. So do take a look at our website to see the remaining sessions that we have, and join us absolutely whenever you can. And you can see all of our different social media platforms for those that are getting techie, which especially during these COVID days, a lot of us are embracing this technology, such as Zoom, a lot more. Please check us out. And lastly, a reminder that, again, we are trying to be back in person. The virtual platform has been great because we can reach plenty of people. We can record these and put them out there. But it doesn't replace, really getting to sit around a table and talk with other people and meet other people. So we are hoping that COVID willing, we can gather next year. We've got our dates locked on from 31 August to 2 September to do our leadership symposium and our career and transitioning seminar in Norfolk, Virginia. So certainly mark that on your calendar, and we hope that you can join us for that. And so with that, again, I would just like to say thank you very much. It was a wonderful panel. I enjoyed speaking with you today. Thank you for those that have joined, and have a wonderful day.